We have some visitors with us who aren't familiar with these organizations. WiseUp is a nonprofit member organization of older adults committed to aging with attitude. The organization connects members to services, supports, and social engagement, helping them to remain active, healthy, and vital in their communities. The League of Women Voters serves Evanston and Skokie. We are a nonprofit or nonpartisan and nonprofit organization whose purpose is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League takes action on issues. It does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Both of these organizations would welcome your membership and have websites with a lot more information and where you could also join. So tonight's topic is reparations. So important. We are really looking forward to being informed about the historical context, the process taking place, the plan and timeline of reparations policy in Evanston. So I'm pleased tonight to introduce Betty Hayford as our moderator. Betty has held several positions within the League, including co-president. She is currently on the Evanston board, provides leadership for the local government committee and observer corps, coordinates the local newsletter, the Intercom, works with the events committee, and serves on the county league board. I think the bottom line here is I'm not quite sure what we would do without her. I'm going to turn it over to Betty now and let her introduce our program and our speakers.
Thank you, Jennifer. That is indeed very gracious and kind of you to make those warm remarks. And I want to say good evening to all the people that are here, even though I can't see you. And as Jennifer says, I am Betty Hayford, and I think I'm representing the monthly events committee here. And we are very pleased to offer our September event with the co-sponsorship of WiseUp to discuss such an important Evanston issue, reparations to the Evanston Black community for damages from the past century of racial discrimination. And this topic has been very much in the forefront for over a year in Evanston. The Equity and Empowerment Commission, which Jane Grover is the chair of, and she may want to say more about this, but this commission discussed the questions of racial equity and came up with the idea of reparations and sent it to City Council, and City Council set up either a committee or a subcommittee, I'm not sure which, to address this. Robin Rue Simmons has been chairing this committee for the past year. This committee started off doing some historical research to really clarify the issue, and then began to develop programs, consulting experts and resources in Evanston, but also throughout the country. So let me introduce our speakers and then turn it over to them. I think we're going to start with Jane Grover, who is the chair of the Commission on Equity and Empowerment. She, as well as this current duty, she served the city of Evanston as alderman in the 7th Ward. And in addition, in recent years, she has been working in our regional planning agency, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP. So she has both a lot of local experience and broader regional experience. Robin Rue Simmons is currently alderman for the 5th Ward and has been the developer and the leader of various businesses in Evanston over many years. She has served as the chair of the subcommittee and has worked locally and also consulted nationally, and has been recognized for this work by local and national groups And there are many, many awards that she's received for this, and national recognition, but most recently, the Democratic Party of Evanston has presented her with its Community Service Award for 2020. So congratulations, Robin, and welcome to both of you. And I will turn this over to you, but let me tell the group that the plan is for our speakers to present their case. And then if they don't tell us everything we want to know, we will have the chance to ask them questions. The events committee has prepared some questions, and you, the audience, will also have a chance to ask questions through the chat function. So if you have questions during the presentation or at the end, please put them in chat, and I or the speakers will attempt to answer them. So is there anything else I need to say, or can I just turn it over to Jane and Robin with our thanks?
That's great. Thank you, Betty, very much. I think we're gonna start the presentation with Robin. I'm going to be sharing my screen for the PowerPoint presentation. We'll take some breaks to reconvene so that we can see everybody, and I will be putting into the chat some good links about the history and background for reparations, connections to the media coverage of Evanston's local effort, and ways that you can get more involved with Evanston reparations. But this is really Robin's initiative. So let me try to share my screen now to a PowerPoint presentation, and then Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to the League of Women's Voters. This is really Evanston's initiative, and I'm so proud to be an Evanstonian. Before I start, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for that great voter education piece that came out today. I saw it in a newsletter. So to those that are joining us tonight, I recommend that you see that newsletter. If you do not subscribe, then I believe it's on their website. It was very helpful, actually. So here in Evanston, we are beautifully diverse, and we know and acknowledge our segregation. We acknowledge our disparities, and we work together to address them. Here in Evanston, we have a $46,000 household income divide. We have a 13-year difference in life expectancy. We have education gaps and other disparities that led me to start a conversation with the Equity Empowerment Commission on how we might consider reparations as a way to bridge those gaps and repair damages that we know have been done through historically racist, anti-Black racist practices, policy, procedure, and culture that we've had here historically in Evanston. And not to beat up on Evanston, this is not unique, but this is our story, and we are ahead of other cities in advancing reparations and redress specifically for the injured community, the Black community. And as I did my work on City Council, I saw that we had a declining Black population. We are less than 17% right now. I'm really curious and a little concerned about what our 2020 census information is going to tell us, but we declined to less than 17% when we were above 20% in Black population here in Evanston. The exodus of the Black community is because of lack of affordability, lack of options for living wage jobs, a lack of sense of place, and we want to address that. Reparations is a way to advance that, a policy way to advance that. And so throughout this presentation, there is important historical information, data. There's even an article, I believe, on the next slide. And I want to take this time to acknowledge that this work was only accelerated with the support of Shorefront Legacy Museum and the leadership of Dino Robinson, the organization's founder. I get that question all the time. How did you all do it so quick? We did it so quick here in Evanston because we had all the pieces in place. We had the ally community. We were committed to advancing policy and looking at things with an equity lens. We were already doing equity and empowerment work. We had a mayoral appointed Equity Empowerment Commission and the Chief Equity Officer. And we had acknowledged our wrongs and even made an apology with a proclamation in July of 2019 to end systemic racism. And we called out some of that racism. So with that, we advanced this work. I just needed to pause and
Sorry, Robin.
that's okay. Just thank Dino Robinson for his work that really helped establish a foundation. Another reference that was very important was in partnership with the Equity Empowerment Commission and Shorefront Legacy was a redlining exhibit that was in the Civic Center for weeks, if not longer, that was very helpful. It gave a visual and a timeline to redlining racial segregation in Evanston. And we know how it has impacted our community. It's impacted our community by our historic redlining map is also our map that has concentrated poverty. It has concentrated disinvestment. We know that we lost a neighborhood school there. We know that we lost other important community institutions, the YMCA, the community hospital. There was other disinvestment.
There's a slide on that.
There's a slide on that? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, where you've listed the, hold on. Sorry if you're dizzy watching me skip through these slides.
I'll just go from the slides.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So stop there.
It's a whirlwind.
Thank you. So we'll just start here. So this work was, before I get into that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Jane. I think I talked enough about why reparations. Reparations because Black Evanston residents do not have the same lived experience, the same access to resources and empowerment as white Evanston residents. And that is because of historic racist practices that we are aware of. And the Equity Empowerment Commission accepted the challenge of advancing it. And I'm going to hand it over to our amazing chair of the Equity Empowerment Commission, who gave me no pushback, embraced it, knew that it was a challenge, and decided to lead the Equity Empowerment Commission along with partnering with me in leading our community to advance the process of reparations.
Well, the process began with Alderwoman Rue Simmons' simple, modest request, and that was, could the Equity Empowerment Commission please take a look at a process to start having a conversation about reparations in Evanston. It was a simple idea that frankly put in motion an initiative that was unprecedented in the United States a year ago. So it was in February 2019 that the commission got a memo, just a memo from Alderwoman Rue Simmons that said, would you please take a look at it? Would you please convene a subcommittee to discuss solutions only to address our community's wealth and opportunity gaps? So we did. We created the subcommittee. There were 3 of us on the subcommittee. We decided that Robin urged us to make sure that there was a heavy community engagement component to the development of a reparations process. So we convened 2 big community meetings in July 2019. On a Thursday evening and a long Saturday morning, over 100 residents attended the committee's workshops to discuss the whys of reparations, the who's, the what's, and the how's. And the consensus was that we needed to address the wealth and opportunity gaps in Evanston. And the workshops produced a number of ideas focused on housing and economic opportunity. And when we take a break, I will post up in the chat box those documents, the subcommittee, the commission's recommendations, and what the workshops produced. The residents had some ideas for how to fund a program for reparations, but it was the Aldermanic Committee that Alderwoman Rue Simmons now chairs that proposed the brilliant funding source, which was the new revenue generated by sales of recreational cannabis. There is a social justice tie-in, of course, to using cannabis sales to fund reparations. And if you produced another map, kind of like the redlining map of Evanston, you produced a map that showed the arrests and incarcerations related to illegal cannabis in Evanston. it looks like our redlined map. And so this was a way to directly tie the source of funding to where the harm was done. So the commission took these ideas and perspectives from the residents generated in the workshops, developed a recommendation to the city council, the city council just took it as a recommendation, placed it on file as the city council does, but then created a committee. So here are some of the specific recommendations from the Equity and Empowerment Commission's workshops. They were specific to, in the housing realm, to providing property tax relief, providing housing rehabilitation and repair assistance. We have many of our long-term Black residents who are themselves providers of affordable housing in Evanston, but cannot afford to maintain those properties. Providing down payment assistance to income qualified Black purchasers in Evanston and housing rental assistance. For economic development, the workshops produce these ideas is repurposing Gibbs Morrison Center for co-working space or some kind of economic development generator. Workforce training and providing low interest loans to African-American entrepreneurs. City staff also did a pretty exhaustive survey of all of the city programs and grant programs that we already had so as to not duplicate efforts. And then it went to the city council. So this is now in your hands, Robin.
Thank you. So in 2019, we had an accepted recommendation on city council, and we created a reparation fund in 2019. So this was before it passed. It was actually November that it passed. But we established that fund, and I will acknowledge the first contribution actually came from Dear Evanston organization. And we have since had other contributions from residents in town. This fund exists. It is open to receive contributions from any individual, foundation, organization, and it is a tax deductible fund. The fund is restricted to reparation. We committed to $10 million as an initial fund, and those funds will be coming from recreational cannabis sales, the 3% that we receive here at a municipal level. So in the first quarter of the year, through the through the Reparations Subcommittee, which I chair along with my colleagues Alderman Rainey and Alderman Braithwaite, we began the work of really looking at the feedback and the recommendations that the committee gave us and the recommendations that the Equity and Empowerment Commission gave us, and prioritize housing and economic opportunity business development. Housing is important because much of our defense for reparations found in our housing zoning, in predatory lending practices, and in historic redlining. So we have moved forward initially we were having more regular meetings, but now we're meeting monthly on Fridays. Everything is Zoom. These are public meetings. We encourage you to come and be educated, hear the information firsthand, and share any feedback, any challenges, or any recommendations. We would also love for you to support the work in any way that you are able to. In addition to this, we needed to learn more about what reparations is and what it can be for our city. So we've also held a series of town halls. Our first town hall was in December of 19. We had a very large town hall with several hundred residents that came. It included the Narc Commission, the National African American Reparation Commission. And this is a group of national leaders that have worked on reparations for years, for decades. The great news is this commission includes our own Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste, who was prior the 2nd Ward Alderman. And that commission has really played a support role throughout this process, along with NCOBRA, which is the National Coalition for Blacks for Reparation. And that is a 30-year-old institution that has pursued federal reparations, HR 40, slavery reparations, and now is looking to help communities and municipalities look at reparations locally while they advance HR 40. So we have led the work, and as of about 3 weeks ago, we passed in committee our first housing remedy policy, and that policy gives a direct benefit of $25,000 to qualifying Black residents. And to qualify for reparations as it stands now in committee, you would need to have lived in Evanston between 1919, that's when we have racist zoning policy and other policy on our books in Evanston. In 1969 is when fair housing was passed, and we are looking at that time period as a way to defend redress. And if you lived here then, or if you are a direct descendant of someone that lived here then and you are Black, you qualify for reparations as it stands right now in the committee. So for example, I have generations ahead of me that were Evanston residents. I would qualify for reparations as a legacy resident. Now, of course, we have residents here that did not have family here in 1969 and prior. They would need to prove some injury in housing, some housing discrimination to qualify. And there's so much work to yet be done. And we are asking that our law department puts together a list that residents might be able to see where they can prove housing discrimination, so that we don't put a major burden on those that are looking to qualify for reparations. And so we will continue on in advancing remedy policy. As you know, this is sales tax revenue. We are not launching this program with a $10 million fund. We are only receiving the sales tax as it is available. And so we will continue developing the remedy policy as time advances. Another important thing to mention is we also passed in committee a process that institutionalizes this work. This work must outlive my leadership, anyone currently on city council. This work must advance for generations to come, because the damages really were for generations. My hope is that it is in perpetuity. But we have put together, with the help of Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste, really, who outlined this process, a process with a stakeholder reparation authority. This allows the Black community, historically Black organizations, like faith institutions, like our NAACP, and other organizations like the Chessman Club and others, that will be the voice for reparations as we advance this work and as we think about what repair might look like for the Black community. So those two items are on the agenda for a future city council meeting. There is work to be done yet before it arrives. We will need to establish criteria on how you qualify, how do you prove and verify residency. For some of us, it's going to be very easy. You know, I can very easily show that I am a descendant of someone that lived here in Evanston. Others, it may not be as easy. So those are some of the details that we have to have established before we can move forward to introduction and action at a city council level. But the work it's difficult. The need is high demand, with the impact of COVID and how it has financially crippled the Black community, what it is doing to small independent property owners, landlords, what it is doing to lower wage workers, what it is doing to the community is amplified in the Black community, because we already had barriers to so much, and we had less opportunity and less wealth. So my position and that of the city council is an agreement that we do not hold on this work, that we advance the work. And I should also add that without the incredible commitment from Alderman Ann Rainey and Alderman Braithwaite, and all that they've done to really think and be innovative and reach out to their networks and other resources that we have so that we can strengthen this work, this would not be possible. This is really taking a community to develop the work, and we are committed to it. There's no best practice. Before I made the introduction, I looked into my network at NLC. I'm a member of NLC, an active member. I serve on leadership there. We have 4,000 municipal leaders, and I reached out to the organization to see who had done something similar. And it turns out that we were the first to have reparations locally. And we are innovative, and we are trying to get it right. We're hoping that the community will continue to embrace the work as we have already, and share your gifts and talents and your ability and skill sets to help us improve the work. So with that, there is a ton of information out there. We have a reparation website for the city of Evanston, and Jane is going to put these things in the chat. We have all of our resources there. Our meeting minutes are there. We have videos from our town halls. We recently had, excuse me 1 minute, grandson, 1 second, baby, okay? Can you give me a couple minutes, baby? I know, it's been a long day, sorry. We recently had a town hall. We had a town hall where Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee came, and she shared her support of local reparations as she is advancing federal HR 40, and gave us an update on what's happening with HR 40. As mentioned, reparations, it is a national discussion. HR 40 has been introduced every year for the last 30 years in Congress. And it is now, in this time of a racial equity awakening from all of the trauma that we have experienced from police terror and racial terror and all of the disparities that we have, that HR 40 now has more co-sponsors in the House than it's ever had in its history. It has 150. It's never had more than 70 before, from what I understand. It also has its first ever companion bill in the Senate. And I'm proud to say that our Senator Durbin is a sponsor. And of course, our Congresswoman Jan Jakowski is a co-sponsor in the House. So that's happening. I hope that we will see a markup for that to advance soon in the immediate future. But the momentum is more so than it's ever been in its 30-year history. So I believe we'll see it in our lifetime. And as to mention, there are other cities that have looked to ours for a model on how they might have a similar program. I just direct them to our toolkit of sorts on our reparation webpage, and it gives our timeline. And I let them all know that reparation for their city will look very different. The injury is different, you know, the disparities are different, the opportunities and their resources are different. Every other city may not look to marijuana as a way to fund it. And I'll say that that was not our first recommendation. We early talked about a graduated sales tax, a graduated real estate transfer tax that we had passed a year before. Using that, we had discussed a reparation tax. We thought about the amusement tax that we had passed recently. But ultimately, based on our city having 71% of our marijuana arrests in the Black community, and we're only 16% of the population, and all studies show that Black and white consume cannabis at the same rate, we certainly had a problem with over-policing as it relates to marijuana. And it was appropriate that any revenue from cannabis sales now being legalized in a multi-billion-dollar industry, that those sales and the revenue go to the injured community, which we saw was largely the Black community. And so with that, I don't know if we have any questions, or Jane, you wanted to jump in. Were you able to get in the chat the different references?
I did. I loaded up the chat box.
Is Dino there? So what I wanted to
Dino's
know,
there.
I don't know if we're on a panel platform, or if Dino is able to jump in the conversation or not. Because I would love for Dino. He cannot. I
He
cannot.
could be promoted.
Not necessary. Okay.
There
Well, I
you-
wanted to share that at our last town hall, Dino arranged for Spencer, is it Jourdain? Mr. Jourdain, Alderman Jourdain's son actually presented at our last town hall, and he shared a lot of his father's work and hope and goals and vision for our city, and how some of the work that we're doing now is actualizing or realizing the goals that he had then. So that was really encouraging to hear from Mr. Jourdain. And he actually has a book. Jane, if you could put that in the chat. These books, I believe they're available either through Shorefront Legacy Museum, but he does have books that really tell the history of Evanston. And I would also recommend that you consider a visit, or either inviting Dino for a presentation on our history, so you could learn more about how we decided to advance reparations in Evanston.
I included the link to Shorefront Legacy Center in the chat box.
And with that, I think I'll pause for questions. Jane, unless there's anything else you think that we should add.
Thank you, Dina, for the link to the book, Spencer Jourdain's book. Robin, there's a question from Larry Marks in the chat box
Oh, okay, let me open up my chat.
that I also copied and sent to you privately. So you
Okay,
got it?
I will find that. And I'll add that the, studies show that the disparities, the wealth disparities are widening, and COVID, of course, is going to impact that. And if we continue doing more of the same, we would only sustain the disparities, the gaps that we have, and it was time that we do something really radically different. So I have, sorry, you said, Larry, here it is. I'll read the question out loud. As a Jew, I've been thinking about reparations for over 60 years, resources allocated to survivors of the Holocaust. It has become clear that the Black community now defines reparations as something different. Is there a clear definition of the term reparations that is widely accepted by minority communities now? It is easier to discuss and support the idea when I'm confident that everyone is talking about the same thing. So thank you for the question. And I was really encouraged to see that there was a community in the Jewish community that was in support and endorsed advancing reparations for Blacks in America. But largely the reparation discussion is around compensation. You heard about 40 acres and a mule, and the HR 40 discussion is really looking to monetize what that number is for repair. And even here in Evanston, we're looking at compensation first. It is necessary. You certainly can't repair the damages without compensation. But I would say in the Black community, reparations really is full repair. There is no specific dollar amount that will right the wrongs, the historic wrongs, which include some crimes against humanity, not just moral wrongs, but some crimes against humanity as determined by the United Nations. So those crimes against humanity are need redress. But full repair includes 5 components. It includes cessation or guarantee of non-repetition of bad policy. So we need to look at our policy in Evanston, specifically our zoning policy and other policy that was established in a racist time that has sustained our segregation and other disparities, restitution, compensation, satisfaction. And so I would say that reparations is actually happening now for us here in Evanston. You can learn more about the City Council and our Preservation Commission passing African American heritage sites. There is the Daily Northwestern has been covering all of the sites that have been proposed. There are several. So honoring our places of historical and cultural relevance is empowering the Black community. It is allowing us to feel heard and valued. That's happening, and that actually is part of satisfaction in full repair. In addition, there's been a Black Lives Matter permanent art installation that's been approved from the Arts Council. I believe that is going to Custer and Washington area. And recently, the goal for a 5th Ward STEM school has been awarded a grant to pursue feasibility and next steps in pursuing a 5th Ward school. And that effort has been led by Henry Wilkerson. So I would say that compensation is at the top of the list that when we discuss reparations in our community, repair, but it is not just compensation alone in a monetary value. It is more, it's full repair. And you can learn more about what full repair means to the Black community. Cam Howard published a small booklet on local reparations and included full repair and what that means to the Black community. How will reparations effort, this is from Connie, how will reparations efforts impact the historic housing segregation in Evanston? Do you think Evanston housing will become more integrated as a result of reparation? How will this happen? So that's a great question. One, the benefit for reparation is intended to be used throughout Evanston. So this will not be limited to a historically Black community. So the hope is that residents will take their benefit and they will purchase homes throughout Evanston. The problem there is we're very segregated, and the naturally occurring affordable housing is largely in the west end of the 5th Ward. So the answer is, will it integrate us? It absolutely should integrate our city. That is the goal. The number one goal really is to empower and uplift Black residents in Evanston. Now, whether we continue to stay concentrated in the 5th Ward, it's a complicated question because affordability is still an issue. Even with a $25,000 direct benefit, if the average home value outside of the west end of the 5th Ward is $500,000 or better, then the income average of Black Evanston residents is unlikely to qualify to purchase outside of that area. So that's why I say I hope this work continues for years beyond the initial 10 years. It will take that long to get to justice, economic inclusion here in our city. But in addition to the direct benefits, we are hoping to introduce this housing remedy policy to City Council, partnered with the financial institution in town that will be providing special lending products for reparation recipients. Because even if we do give a $25,000 direct benefit, which should allow a home buyer to get into a home on an FHA loan, 3% down, you have some closing costs, you actually have more than enough. But if we have discrimination in housing practices and predatory lending, and if our rate is a point more on average than the white buyer, this is information that was revealed to us through the State of Black Housing Report, which is on our website. We had a State of Black Housing Report by Mark Austin, who is a national policy expert. And it showed us in Evanston, we had in the last reporting year, which was 1,400 or so mortgage originations from depository banks. And there were only about 90 that were Black buyers or Black families. So in addition to the compensation, we need a holistic, we need a complete, all hands on deck. We need participation from everyone in every institution in town because The compensation alone will not get us the redress, will not get us integrated, will not get us as livable for Black Evanston as it is for white Evanston if we don't have lending products and other financial resources and access to living wage jobs and access to education and a voice, equal representation on boards, commissions, and committees, and roles on governing boards at organizations here in town. Everyone in Evanston can play a role in us having a successful reparation program here in Evanston, because everyone has some voice and some influence that can include and uplift and empower the Black community even more so. If we continue to do as we have been doing, very charitable, very warm, but we have only sustained our disparities, and we have only sustained concentrated poverty in our community. And we have a rich, amazing Black community that has contributed so much to this city. And I am encouraged to see all of the transformation and all that is to come in acknowledging the Black community here in Evanston.
Robin, there was a question from our moderator. Is the subcommittee working with a local financial institution to implement some of these housing programs?
So we are, and until we have a formal agreement, we won't announce that, but I'll say that we have spoken with multiple financial institutions in town with the goal of having a program specific to complement reparations and the compensation. And we have support from everyone that we've talked to, but we do need to get actually a formal product and agreement, and that has not happened yet, but we're hopeful that it will happen.
Megan Davies asks, has there been any thought of creating a reparations curriculum for the school districts?
Wow, that's a great idea. So one thing that I should have added is in 2002, the city of Evanston passed its first reparation resolution. It was led by Alderman Lionel Jean-Baptiste, and it actually gave a recommendation to the district 65 and 202 that they have a complete, thorough, and honest Black history, which would include reparation history. There's a reparation education subcommittee that's been working on that, and I don't know that answer. The answer should be yes. I'd be shocked if it's not yes now that their city has made history with reparation, but I'm hoping that the answer will be yes.
Right. Mary Rosinski had a good thought that about creating, we have housing, but without the jobs with living wages to support taxes and mortgages, then that's a different issue. So,
yeah.
It's creating the kind of jobs that one can rely on to support housing costs.
Exactly. And so to that point, I mean, I think that's the message, and everyone can play a role. Employers, you know, educational institutions, Oakton Community College, you know, there are plenty of career paths that have high wage opportunities that are not a traditional 4-year degree path, so that we should have support from those technical providers, assistant providers, educational institutions, and employers to make sure that fair and favorable job opportunities are being extended to the Black community as well.
Yeah, which kind of gets to Betty's next question, was about getting to the economic development, the wealth and the opportunity gap, which is avoiding duplication in existing city programs for use of the reparations funding to support economic development and entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, is it a specific question?
Yeah, so how will what we want to do with the reparations fund for economic development differ from what the city already does to support entrepreneurs? Like
sure. So, you know, we're doing a lot. I'm proud that we have given dozens of grants, micro grants. We have given facade grants. In fact, that was one of the first things that I did in office, was get 100% facade grants for Church and Dodge and Simpson businesses. It was over $150,000. That was for a particular neighborhood. It did not go direct to the business. But what is different is this is specific to the Black community. Those programs are not set aside for the Black community, they're set aside for the business community. And until we have practices and budgets and priorities specific and targeted to the Black community, as we did in segregating the Black community, we will not get the redress. There are studies that show that if white America just stood still and allowed us to earn and live and grow, it would be 100 years or more before we can bridge our wealth divide. So there needs to be targeted investment. We have not had that. We've had some fair programming that should continue. That is good policy. This is something different. This is reparation. This is specific repair. And we should continue the good policy work that we have done, but it has not proven to be enough, as we can see in our data. And it's important that we target the matters more so than we have. So what that might look like is the same qualifying resident for reparations that was here between 1919 and 1969 have access to direct benefits, not matching grants, not low interest loans. Maybe it is, but it certainly is a direct benefit, one that is set aside and specific for the Black community due to the injuries that we have received in our city.
There's been a question too for the booklet by Cam Howard. Cam Howard, by the way, is spelled K-A-M-M Howard. Robin, where would I find that link if I'm gonna?
It's on Amazon, so.
Okay, great. I'll find that. One.
Okay, it's on Amazon. I think it's also on Encobra's website, but I purchased it on Amazon myself.
Yeah, I looked. Okay, I will find it there.
And so that booklet just gives a few different models of recommendations, rather, for local reparations. And Evanston is one of the 3 models that it references. Okay. As the funding for reparation becomes available, what organizations would be responsible for the allocation and budget review of these funds? And that question is from Larry Marks. Right now, this is a city program and it is being managed by the city. The more we dig into the roots of this work, the more I believe additional support, a consultant, or maybe even a staff person designated to the work, because it's very complex. And we have a heavy lift already, and because of COVID, it's even more so. But right now, the budget, the allocation, all would be finalized by our city council and our staff. But the goal is, through this Reparation Stakeholder Authority, that the decisions really be made by the Black communities. And that's going to be stakeholders, leaders that might lead at home on their block in institutions here in town. We have Black experts here in town. We have Northwestern professors that have joined in the work that we're doing here locally. And the goal is ultimately that there is a Reparation Stakeholder Authority that determines remedy, allocates funds, is its own separate entity. But right now it's not. Right now it is a group of community members. It's a public process. The community, we hope, will continue having public comment at our meetings. And the subcommittee, we will be the voice of the people. And so that's how this is organized. We are really here to represent the vision, the expectations of the people, and to pass that along to City Council for City Council to pass it.
Other questions? Robin, could you explain what HR 40 looks to do? It's not actually a program of reparations?
Sure. So HR 40 is has been actually edited. It initially was a study bill. So it was commissioned to study reparations and the feasibility of reparations. It has been rewritten with the support of Encobra and Cam Howard and Narc commissioners, that it is also a remedy bill. So now it is a study and remedy bill to study and establish remedy for repair for the Black community. It is a slavery reparation. So this reparation is for the transatlantic slave, its impact here in the United States. You know, those were determined to be crimes against humanity by the United Nations. The United Nations determined that reparations are in order. And that's been several years ago now that there has not been any real action. But Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas, the Houston area, she is now the sponsor of that bill that was originally sponsored for 30 years by John Conyers out of Michigan. And she has broad support. As I mentioned, our own Congresswoman Jan Jakowski was one of the early co-sponsors, and she has broad support over 150 of her colleagues in Congress. But there is not a, because it hasn't been marked up yet and passed, there is no funding stream. There's not even a dollar amount put on it. And there's a lot of really, I wouldn't call it controversy, but differences in opinion on what that number should be, what repair should be. Should it be direct payments only? Should it be programmatic? All of that is yet to be determined in Congress. And I'm in full support. Fortunately, our Congress people that represent us are in support as well.
Robin, what's the, Larry's asking another question, the anticipated timing for raising and allocating the reparations funds. Right now, just based on initial revenue projections, the city is taking in, at least in the first 6 months, what was it, $450,000, just the city's portion of the sales tax from cannabis, recreational cannabis. That's a whole lot of tax revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, what's your thinking on the timing for raising and allocating the funds?
So initially we put 10 years on there for 10 million, and that was very conservative. And we understand now that that's extremely conservative, especially with the passing now of 3 new cannabis licenses. So now we have, in addition to dispensaries, we have craft grower, infuser, and transporter for cannabis. So those revenues will also go into our fund. We certainly will get to $10 million much sooner than 10 years. And we passed our initial housing remedy policy with the first 400,000 based on the projection that we had for our initial revenue. And we will continue to develop remedy policy. But to your answer, the question that you have is really important. We hope to pass this housing remedy policy in the very near future. We expect to receive cannabis sales tax at a municipal level in October, next month actually. And the hope is that we would be in alignment with passing the first remedy policy and receiving the funds so that we could have, give out a direct benefit to Black residents very soon. I mean, we have on our original timeline 2021. I always had a really ambitious personal goal for us of 2020, and it can happen if we can get our remedy policy finalized. But the more we get into the work, the more details become very, very important in case there are any legal challenges or any other reasons that might challenge the work. We want to make sure that it's solid. And our law department is holding us true to that. And we have the support of a historically Black university here in this nation to help us if we do have any challenges and to think through any sort of legal questions that we have. And of course, on the commission, who's been our support and mentor through this, they have multiple attorneys. Obviously, Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste is a commissioner, but the timeline, I would say my projection with the new revenue streams from cannabis would be a few years that we could get to the $10 million. Now, my goal is that the $10 million is a seed, that it establishes a practice, that it gives a reference and a best practice, a model, that we have a proof of concept through how we might give direct benefits and how those direct benefits might strengthen Black families. So I'm really looking forward to the first recipients being able to share their story of transformation and how it can change the trajectory of their financial health for their family. and how we can look to that and duplicate it for other families and bridge the racial wealth divide that we have here in Evanston.
Mary Rosinski's asked another question about how many of our dispensaries are Black owned. Do we just have one operating dispensary now, which is both recreational and medical, and then it's the other licenses that would, in theory, create new businesses?
Right, so we only have the one, and fortunately, we had several social equity candidates that we're hopeful are going to get a license by the state. But if you've been following that process, they've been delayed. Maybe it's COVID. I've heard also that there were so many ties that they had to come up with a process to break the ties for the social equity candidates. So with that, right now there's only one, but my hope, my advocacy, and that of my colleagues is that we have Black candidates that receive their license to have dispensaries here in Evanston. And now there's even more opportunity with the 3 new licenses.
A question from Julia Woodson about former Black residents of Evanston who have moved from Evanston but would otherwise qualify if they lived here. Would they qualify for any of our reparations funding?
Yes, so if they otherwise qualify, then they still qualify. That would be the legacy, you know, having lived here at 69 or being a direct descendant. The hope is that we not only sustain our Black community, but we build the community back. Many of us are not far. We've had to relocate to Gurnee or to South suburbs, to Atlanta and Houston, different places for affordability. And many want to come back. I personally know Black families that live out of the area, but they still play, worship, serve here in Evanston because they're still connected to Evanston, but just were not able to find affordable housing that was appropriate for their families. So yes, hope that they come back.
Ann Yoshida is asking, I think generally to the league, is there a way to get access to this program? Is this being recorded? It looks like it is being recorded, Ann, so maybe the league will put the recording on its website after this. Another question is about what can individuals do now? The League of Women Voters, its individual members, what can, and I am a league member in good standing still, I hope, do to support the reparations effort?
So this is a huge start, just in educating your membership, in being a supporter, advocating for it, in areas that you still have questions or are unsure, finding more information, looking, you know, joining the subcommittee meetings and getting informed yourself, being an ally. We have a facilitator guide on our reparation website. If you want to host a small group in a comfortable setting with your warm network, you have access to a facilitator guide that we would love feedback. It could be anonymous feedback, but anything that would help us strengthen the work. And then you can also give. If you want, you can match the $10 million funds and give $10 million to the city of Evanston or to the Evanston Community Foundation, who has just established a reparation fund. And we're really grateful that the foundation is doing that because it allows for major donors that are more comfortable donating to that organization and their fiscal agency for them to donate there. And that will still be led and decided on by the stakeholder community as well, with the goal of ultimately having an independent 501c3. But right now it would be a fiscal agent of the foundation. So those are ways, just your support, your advocacy. Talk to your alderperson about why you support reparations. I think we're okay. We had very strong support. We were 8-1 vote in support of reparations, and I haven't heard anything different. But the more we have in support in the ally community, the more we have a chance at advancing this work, growing the fund, actually getting the repair, bridging the gaps, addressing our disparities, providing spaces for Black leadership and Black living wage employment, access to education. Just your support means so much, and being educated in reparations. And if you privately don't get it yet, if you don't get it and you don't believe and you don't see why, seek more information. A report that I love is actually the 1619 report. I just actually spoke on a panel this week with Nicole Hannah-Jones. She's brilliant, and the way she put together the 1619 report is a nice guide on why reparations.
Put that in there too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing that Dino sent us links to the books, but it was only to the panelists. I've just put it in the general chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank Dino. Thank you, Dino.
Thank you, Dino. Thank you for everything.
Jane, it looks like you and Robin have really answered all the questions that we have. And maybe we should express our very strong thanks to you. I mean, this has been so informative, and even for those of us who have tried to follow it and attended some of the meetings and read the articles in the media, you know, it's great to hear it all put together in such a positive way. So I guess, I mean, maybe there's one more question, and after that we can close it down. Would you think, Jane?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put the Shorefront Legacy Center, the link again, so that you could go there and donate to the Shorefront Legacy Center, so you could continue and help Dino support his good work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question again from Larry. When you allocate funds to support specific programs, what organizations will develop evaluation processes to ensure that the outcomes are in the line with your goals? As mentioned right now, the work is largely being led by the stakeholder community. Those leaders represent organizations. So we have organizations in town that have Black leaders that are helping us think about this work. Right now, there's no formal partnering organization specifically that is helping us evaluate processes. But as I mentioned, this is very laborious, a lot of time needed. I could literally have a full-time job doing the work, and it really should be full-time. And we don't know yet. So if you have a recommendation on an organization that has expertise that can help us measure impact, that can help us develop program that is going to give us the return that we want, and that return is increased wealth and household incomes of Black residents and a better lived experience. Wellness is going to include other tools of empowerment. We would really welcome your recommendation. And it seemed like, Mr. Marks, you've had so many great questions. Maybe you could get in touch with the subcommittee offline and challenge us or give us more feedback so that we can accelerate the work. And so I think that one of the great things that the League has done, and I think Jane just put in the chat, is just this is something that you did to support reparations. Everyone does not even know what's happening or that we've even passed it. So allowing us some time to give a little bit of background and some insight and just be transparent, answer questions, and accept feedback or pushback is helpful in advancing reparations and supporting reparations.
And what we're trying to do is just normalize reparations as a conversation, as a policy, as a direction. And part of that has to be then understanding this country's history of enslavement and its repercussions and its legacy for millions and millions of American residents and citizens. So we have no excuse not to know it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Jane. And we are really pleased that so many of our members and WiseUp members could be with us tonight, because this has been so informative, and it's a little bit scary initially to think, to think about this and to try and understand what it means. And you provided tremendous help to us in understanding, and I think we will be able to pass the word along. And also, understand more as things develop, and as your program develops, we'll have a context to hear it and support it. So I guess I want to thank you both, Jane and Robin, of course, for your presentation, but also for your very hard work. I mean, I've been following it as best I can, and I know how much work has been done, in mobilizing the community, but also putting together very solid information as a very substantial foundation for this program. So thank you both, and I'm sure we'll see you again and hearing more.
If reparations happen, it will lift the entire community, not just our Black community.
You know what, and I know that you were trying to close us out, Betty, but that's so important that you said that. And it shouldn't take that it's going to help other communities, but you should know that it is going to help other communities. And it was the segregation, what was that report? It was a Metropolitan Planning Council, cost of segregation. So could you put that in the link in the chat also?
Will.
It's the cost of segregation report. Read this report. It uses Chicago as an example on if we were not segregated, if we uplifted the Black community, how it would bring multi-billion-dollar of increment to the city of Chicago. Of course, we're much smaller, but it was, when I read that article, I was really inspired on how we could get buy-in from all of the community. That report showed how we would have more college degrees, which would translate into, you know, more higher paid jobs. We would have violence reduction. We would have thriving businesses. We would have healthier families. So read that report and just kind of put Evanston in that model. I'm still asking some organization to either fund us or come up with a comparable report for the city of Evanston, like the cost of segregation report that the Metropolitan Planning Council did for the city of Chicago. That would be really helpful, would be eye-opening, and it would get all of the city bought in, because everyone would see how it would increase our tax revenue. Ultimately, those revenues help us support our city and, you know, address infrastructure needs and other programs. So it really is a win-win for all of Evanston. And I usually default to that, but I don't usually have to in Evanston, because we want to do what's right for our residents. But for some, it takes that for them to see what it's for. But we're addressing some crimes against humanity in some cases, the racial terror. So it shouldn't take that, but that is another value add for those that want to know what's in it for them. Those that might say, I didn't have a slave, and, you know, I don't have any slave revenue. Sure we do. We are established in the transatlantic slave history, and there is generations of wealth that is transferred over. But the issue here is we want a livable, just city for all of Black Evanston residents, as much as every other resident, every other racial group, every other group here in town. And we have evidence of discrimination specifically against the Black community. And this is a way that we can uplift the Black community.
Well, thank you for those inspiring words, Robin. It's a terrific way to end. And I mean, you put it in such a positive framework, and that's what's so important. So thank you again. And
Thank you.
we're ready to close off. Good night to all.
All right, good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
I have saved the chat with all